ladies. How are you this evening?
Good evening.
Oh, hi.
Well, welcome everyone. We have quite a few people joining us right now for this live stream. I'm your facilitator, Sarah B. NWV, and tonight we are again with the West Virginia House Democratic Women's Caucus members. We have Delegate Cindy Lavender Bowe here with us and Delegate Lisa Zukov, and I think Delegate Walker's trying to get back in, right?
That ongoing West Virginia internet challenge.
It just never stops. We win for the worst, I think. Anyway, and I think we may have some others joining us as well. But we're just going to jump right in because it seems these hours go by so fast. So again, if you're joining live, if you have questions, if you have comments for the ladies joining us with us tonight, the delegates with us this evening, then please feel free to add your question to the comment section. If you're watching on the replay, you can still add your question to the comment section, and we will be happy to make sure that those get answered. Tonight, we're going to this is our LEAD virtual tour, which is Listen, Empower, Act, and Dream. And tonight, we're going to talk about empowerment. And I think it is so timely, especially after the loss of such a giant in terms of women who have led the way, the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it is shocking to me, ladies, that she was the first woman to lay in state.
Yeah.
I said that this morning as well.
Yeah.
It just seems, I mean, this is 2020. So, but her rabbi said some things that were just so spot on, which were that she wasn't necessarily dissenting for today. She was dissenting for the future and planning for the future. And that's kind of what I want us to talk about tonight is the future of West Virginia. And I was having a conversation on social media with someone recently, and I was kind of disappointed because they were kind of pitting two women against each other. And I'm like, come on, guys, we've got the lowest percentage of women serving in the legislature. This is not what we need at all. So it's got to feel lonely sometimes. There she is.
Hey.
Hello, Delegate Walker. How are
West
you?
Virginia broadband. I'm sorry.
It happens to one of us every time.
Well,
it was your turn, Danielle.
And Doc Staggers is going to try and join us as well. I gave her maybe try to tap into the modem directly. So we'll see. But yeah, did anyone watch any of the proceedings with Justice Ginsburg?
Well, I actually went to D.C. yesterday. I didn't go for the memorial, which was today, but I went yesterday and got to see her in repose in the Supreme Court, and it was pretty amazing, just historic. As you said, it's unbelievable that it's the first time that a woman has laid in state at the Capitol. So it just felt like it was such a historic opportunity. I wanted to be there and pay tribute. Justice Ginsburg was a warrior, and she was a hero for generations of women like us. And, we have this small but mighty group of women in the House Caucus, and we've been, this was a blow. We lost a hero, but we are ready to fight. And that is exactly what she meant for the future to be for women, is to continue that fight, to continue the fight for equality, to continue to use our voices. And that's how we honor her. So.
Absolutely.
I had a friend, Cindy, who sent me a quote today because it's been such a rough week. And she said, "The fight isn't over. Fascism and authoritarianism feed off a demoralized society. They create the illusion of powerlessness, but it isn't real. Reject it. History shows us when people remember they have power and agency, they win. So I just think it's critical for us, as hard as it is right now, as you said, Cindy, to band together and to continue the work that we've all been doing. No one ever told us it would be easy, and it surely isn't. Especially at this time, this last week, it just seems like it was one blow after another. From 5 minutes after, it seemed like, well, we were on this call when we all found out. So
Yeah.
we couldn't get off the call and react. But 5 minutes after, it seemed like 5 minutes after we got off the call, I saw an announcement where Mitch McConnell said that they were going to go ahead and push forward. And it's almost like this week with the push for naming another Supreme Court justice. They didn't even let us have time to grieve. She's not even laid to rest yet. I mean, or did it really need to happen the same day she passed? And can we not just respect who she was to so many, and that her life was amazing? I found that really hard to deal with all week. And I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but it was tough. It was a tough week.
Yeah. Especially when we compare to the last time we lost a Supreme Court justice, and we had 11 months till an election, and that was too short of a time. And we were not allowed to. Our president was not allowed to nominate to make a nomination that would be taken up by the Senate. And now, the word is there's going to be an announcement tomorrow on Saturday.
He already made the announcement this evening.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
He more or less said, but his staff said they were very cautious because he can make last minute decisions. So it is really sad. And Delegate Zukoff, you brought something forward. My question is, if this had been a male member of the Supreme Court, would it have been different?
We all are
response.
You're saying, Sarah, what we all think. I thought it was very powerful today watching when all of the women from Congress lined the Capitol steps in front of her. I had tears in my eyes. Just, she said she stood on the shoulders of giants before her, and that's what we all have to do now for her. To remember her legacy and to continue that work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Delegate Walker, I'm going to pivot to you a little bit because we're talking about empowerment. I'm going to ask a question. Have you heard back from the governor?
Did you miss the briefing today?
Oh, yeah.
He told the state police to call me in the Human Rights Commission, which I've heard from. But the governor himself, Mr. Telephone Man, y'all know New Edition, something's wrong with my line. Because he ain't never called Danny's number because he would never get a click this time.
Yep.
So no, still waiting. So,
well, and if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, I guess I should have prefaced that question first. Delegate Walker and members of the West Virginia House Democratic Women's Caucus sent letters to the governor regarding basically silence from the administration and from leadership regarding the white supremacists who have come forward and threatened the lives of Delegate Walker and Delegate Brown, and have really sought to intimidate and terrorize, I think, a lot of people in the state who are marching peacefully for Black Lives Matter and for human rights, just in basic equality. And we saw that happen in Kingwood. That, I have to tell you, some of those images, Delegate Walker, were terrifying to me. I mean, I think if it were, I don't think I would have been very intimidated, but when you're talking about some folks and you're looking at that and they have guns, you're thinking, oh my goodness, tell us what that was like, because it ended a little differently than we would have thought.
Of course. Looking at any pictures, we always say what we could have done, should have done, or would have done. But being in that moment, you never know what you're going to do. Because it wasn't about flight, fight, or freeze. At that moment, the only thing I had on my side was my faith and the love in my heart and peace. I have been scolded for wearing a piece of tin with my name on it. Now, just because it has my name on it and just because I wear it, this is the people's name tag. So anywhere I go, there's nothing in ethics that says I cannot wear the pin of the people. Now, because other people may not choose to do that and may choose to wear the lapel pin, that's the beauty of freedom and choice. And maybe I wore that pin as a shield of protection for everyone that was involved. Those that started walking with me peacefully, and those who felt that we were coming to do some kind of terroristic act. I have no problem. I've been around guns. I am a gun owner. But there's a time and a place for everything. Now, I can guesstimate what those weapons were there for, because these folks truly felt that we came there to destroy their town. They thought that we were going to loot and burn things. I had a wristless wallet, so I can be identified. My phone, my keys, and a bottle of water. No gasoline. Nothing. So what was I going to destroy except for calling out the hidden underlying act of hate and racism? We came there to ask for justice in an unjust way of how Breonna Taylor was slaughtered, right? How Ahmaud Arbery was lynched, right? To make sure we never forget Emmett Till, right? Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice. The list goes on and on. And I want to have this very hard conversation because when we gather together in a rally, a march, or a protest.
Oh, we lost her right in the middle of that. Oh, well, we'll certainly bring her back on. Doc Stackers, welcome.
Hello. Frontier just allowed me to have internet access.
Well,
I just don't know what's going on.
No, I don't know. You both disappeared at the same time, and then Doc Staggers. I think Doc Staggers kicked you out, and she
I showed up.
Yeah.
Well, I will say I'm not in West Virginia tonight, so I think I'll be on the whole time.
You'll be on. Yeah, you'll be on. Well, as you were saying, Delegate Walker, and I want us to not forget that James Means. Do we remember James Means, the young man that was killed on the west side of Charleston by a white man because he was not doing something right? I don't remember the specifics, but he was obviously, the individual was convicted, but there was no rioting then. There was, which I was actually shocked by, that there wasn't more of a greater protest to it. But yeah, how did things end up there at Kingwood, Delegate Walker?
As I was speaking to the crowd before we were supposed to have a list of speakers, it was an intense walk of about 3 or 4 blocks. And so I just wanted to bring everybody calm and make sure that we were on the same accord. And I started speaking and I said, remember, when we say Black Lives Matter, we know all lives matter. And someone in the first gentleman I spoke to said, yes, that's right, all lives matter. And I may have said a couple of more words, gave up the megaphone, and I said, can I talk to you? And because we were coming to a point of what he was understanding, I think it frustrated him even more. I don't even remember placing my hand on his shoulder, because at that moment I was emotional. And I said, sir, when have you ever driven your vehicle and felt intimidated when a police officer is behind you, or you see one on the side of the road, or if you see the lights flash on, if you're going to make it back to your loved ones or to your home, your job? And it was like, never. I said, well, welcome to my world where I fear when I sleep and my children sleep. Welcome to my world where I never know if my 2 kings, my sons, are going to make it back to me. Welcome to my world where I have a 23-year-old. And as a mother, because he doesn't drive, I kind of feel good about that. But it's not, and it's heartbreaking when your 19-year-old doesn't have no want to drive because he fears that it's going to be a homicide if he's ever stopped. Now, this mentality of that conversation ended. We agreed to disagree. But there was another gentleman who came across the street that grew up in a holler with the organizer. The name of the holler just blew me out of this world. And I asked the gentleman, please don't say that name no more. And they spoke. And I pushed myself out of the situation. And that gentleman asked if we could take down the Black Lives Matter flag. And I told him I was not holding a flag or the banner, and he would have to speak to those persons. And I gave the torch. The torch was the organizers, not mine. They decided to take those 2 things down. And at that time, I don't know how I felt. And it didn't matter how I felt, because from the outside looking in, how was I going to be judged? And at that point in time, the narrative I'm going to say was irrelevant. Those 2 men decided to walk back to our starting point. And I had one request. We walk arm in arm. A picture is worth 1,000 words. But that uncomfortable moment for that movement will forever be in my heart.
Well, I have to tell you, when I saw that image of you, I truly did feel empowered. There was a strength in that image. And I think one of the messages that we want to convey this evening and all the time is that women are incredibly strong. And so many of them don't know their real worth in this world and in this state. And I was talking about Judge Ginsburg and how she had carried this humongous torch, and now it was imperative that we each take our own little part of that torch and carry it with us at all times. And that's, you know, kind of one of the things that I was thinking about when I saw Delegate Walker, that image of you, and how it made me feel empowered to continue speaking up and speaking out. And it extends beyond that. It's kind of what they were talking about with Justice Ginsburg, that dissent is not necessarily of something today, but of something to prepare for the future. So I don't know. It was a very powerful image, and I hope that there's a lot of women in West Virginia that can feel that same passion and empowerment, and be willing and ready to speak up. If not speak up, volunteer for a campaign. If you don't want to volunteer for a campaign, run for office. We need more women in the legislature. As we've said before, the state of West Virginia has the lowest percentage of women representation in the nation. And it's just unacceptable.
I want to thank Delegate Walker too for her strength. I personally, when I first saw when the post started, I was terrified. I couldn't watch because I was afraid she was going to be harmed. And I sat here and lifted her up in prayer for probably an hour because I was that afraid for her. And that was the only way couldn't be there. I couldn't be there. I didn't feel like I could back her up, but that was the only thing I knew to do at the time, to give her strength and peace.
And you know, seeing those images, like Lisa just said, they were terrifying. And this is a person that we know and that we serve with and that we love very deeply. And it was terrifying. But then when I saw the photo later of Delegate Walker walking arm in arm with those guys, I literally said aloud, "Oh, of course she did, because she's kind and she leads with love, and that is how you make change." And that was empowering to know that in the face of all the hate and the weapons and the immense anger, fear, hurt, all the gamut of emotions that I can't even begin to imagine that you were feeling, that you still come from that place of kindness and love, that you're still a nurturer and a mom, and you want everyone to be understood and everyone to know their value. And that was the most empowering thing that I've seen. And I've seen you do a lot of empowering things. Thank you.
I totally agree. And I appreciate the fact that the caucus, after Delegate Walker sent that letter, that you guys, stood with your colleague and a person you love very much. And it needs to be talked about. And so I hope you'll get a response. I really do, because this is an opportunity for West Virginia to, I think, take the lead in something that could then have a ripple effect.
Yes.
And that's, we don't have anything to lose at this point. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. But imagine if we could have this administration come forward and say what needs to be said to call these people out, and do it knowing it may cost him votes, but doing it anyway.
Right. And using the power of his leadership position to bring people together.
Mm-hmm.
Not just to call it out, of course, but to say, we need to work on this, West Virginia. I'm just going to go out there and say, I've talked to a lot of constituents about some of these issues, and they don't understand because they don't have to live it. and they don't know folks who have to live it. I've had to give certain examples to say, how would you feel about this? And one of the things that I saw that was the most powerful thing last week was Delegate Pushkin shared with us was Tyler Childers. It was a video about him talking to his Appalachian folks that he's from Kentucky. And one of the stories he said was, think about it this way. You're out fishing with your child, your son or daughter, and the game warden comes up and you go to get into your fishing box to get your hunting license because you know he's going to want to see it, and he shoots you in front of your child because he thinks you might have a knife in that tackle box. And hey, in West Virginia, you probably do. If it's not in your pocket, you know. And how would you feel if that was you? And he gave several other stories, and he said this is what some folks have to deal with over and over and over again. And would we rise up if that was happening in our area in the ways I just mentioned? Of course we would. But I think those kind of messages where we have to make it real for people, so that they have an understanding. Maybe they don't get it at that point, but at least you planted a seed for them to start thinking about things differently.
Absolutely. And I think in some ways, when women started speaking out against sexual harassment in the workplace, that led to this empowering movement where women basically said, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. And we sent a very strong message. You know, I remember when the movie Working 925 came out. Was that what it was called? With Dolly Parton. And that was one of the messages in it. And so, yes, Delegate Zukov, you're right. This is an opportunity to really lead in a time when people are begging for leadership.
And what a moment to miss if he doesn't do that.
But you know what? You know who I see leading right now? Right here on my screen. Delegate Bowe, Doc Staggers, Delegate Walker, Delegate Zukov, and I know there's others that weren't able to join us tonight. There are candidates out there who are running hard on the issues of importance to West Virginians. That's leadership. Willing to take it up, run for office is not for the weak at heart. And then serving is a full-time job. People say, they're only there for 60 days, and that's baloney. They are there for 60 days, but they work a full-time job all year round.
Especially this year.
Yeah, this has been a tough year. And honestly, I'm ready to just say goodbye to 2020 early. Well, yeah, seriously.
We need to get through November 3rd first, though.
Right. And that's really what I think one of the things that we really want to talk about tonight is November 3rd. I hear, and I'd like to hear what you all hear from your constituents. I've actually had people say, I don't vote because things that they do don't affect me.
It does now.
Like, what? Everything affects you. Everything. So what are you guys hearing out there about the election? And are you hearing concerns about, the validity of mail-in votes? What are you hearing out there? Doc Staggers, are you hearing anyone?
Yeah, let me tell you what I think we need to bring forth to people. They'll say, well, I'm going to wait. There's two things that they should worry about. This virus is still exploding. They may be in quarantine for the whole time to vote. So they better vote absentee ballot, because if they can't leave the house, they're not going to get to vote. And number two, since the Republicans fixed the post office, maybe their ballots aren't going to be delivered. So they have to, I walked mine into the clerk's office and put it down, and she checked it in. So everyone, I think, in America is starting to understand that, yes, we're killing people, not just Black people, but anyone else with this virus, with this prejudice, with this ugliness, with this division. We want peace and dignity, and that's what I'm preaching. Let's make the government quiet and functional again. But tell them they better vote because they might be in quarantine or might be dead by election day.
I talk about choice.
That's all.
Yeah, when folks go, off about, well, they don't want to vote absentee, they don't believe in that, and I say that's fine, that's your choice. But this year, you have no excuse not to vote. You can still get registered. You can vote. You can get an absentee ballot. You can mail it back in. You can go early when there won't be as many people at the polling places, and then you can go on the election day. So this is to keep everybody safe, and it's your choice. And there's no excuse. That's how I feel about it. There's no excuse. If you really want to participate this year, it's easier than ever in some sense.
Well, and it's easier, but that doesn't mean that it is less reliable.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Well, when we have the top official in our state who's responsible for elections sending out a mailing saying he's going to protect your right to vote in person. No one's trying to deny anyone's right to vote in person. The mail-in absentee ballots right now are optional. And I believe they should always be an option because I think there are always issues that make it difficult for people to get out to the polls. And a lot of the time that's because, their jobs. And we've seen the last few election cycles all over the country, how long people have to stand in line to cast a vote. And, that's hard. And to ask people to give up, I mean, people were standing in line 7 hours some places to cast their vote, their guaranteed right. And just because we're looking for ways to make sure that people do have the opportunity to cast their vote does not mean that we're trying to infringe upon anybody else's right in the way that they cast their vote. And that was upsetting to me to see the statewide mailing go out and say that he was protecting, because yes, he should be protecting everyone's right to vote in all the ways that are available. And I just don't like the false advertising that anybody's out to stop in-person voting.
Right. The insinuation that's there.
Yeah.
That insinuation in the message. Yeah, you're so right, Cindy.
So what I've been hearing is that a lot of community members didn't even know that it was an option of absentee voting. They had never even heard of that before. And so that education piece is very dire. And to have that transparency, like in our county clerk's office, you can follow from the time that you request your ballot to it gets to your home, to you put it in the mail, it gets to that office. And I think that's most confident. And so it's very disheartening to see the Secretary of State, Mac Warner, have that undertone, because we know where that's coming from. And you're making it political. And the fear factors must stop, whether we are speaking about the most important part of democracy by using your voice. We're also educating people who are incarcerated awaiting trial. They can vote. They can request an absentee ballot. It can be mailed to the jail and they can vote. And so we need to do away with this suppression. If someone has finished serving their time, they're not on probation, guess what? They can vote. But we have deemed people for so long. People are awakened now. They see the food deserts that they're facing right now. And they also see how unemployment was affected and how they tried calling the governor's office and that he wasn't answering the call. So they see that. They see how delegates work and, what the county commission was doing with the health departments. So this pandemic was very hard on us, but it brought so much awareness.
Yeah, there's a
And so
positive
then
there.
you start looking up other races that's very close.
Crystal, we're going to get to you, but Doc Staggers, I know you wanted to add something to the conversation.
Aren't you all really offended that they think that all the felons and all the people in jail are going to vote Democratic? It's like, well, why would they do that if they hadn't been abused by the system? And the other thing, if you do absentee ballots, you don't have to show up and show what color you are, what race you are, or how old you are, how young you are. You're just a person, a United States citizen. And that's why I like the absentee ballots again. But nah, not all the felons are Democrats. And if they are, good for them.
Well, the other thing too is what I fail to understand this is, and I'm just going to say it. The president of the United States is telling people that Democratic states it's not safe to vote by mail, but Republican states it's great. And so I'm offended by that specifically. And if I were a Secretary of State of any party, I would be coming down on that like nothing else matters, because at the end of the day, it puts into question their leadership, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter.
And it's just another one of those things that's been sacred. The sanctity of our voting system is now being undermined and denigrated, and people are losing trust in the system and those officials who are charged with handling the elections. And it's very disturbing. For about 10 years, I was a teacher in Kanawha County Public Schools, and I primarily taught history and government to teenagers. And the conversations that we had, back then 20 years ago, these kinds of things would have never entered my mind. It would have. I remember talking to kids about utilizing their right to vote and not being apathetic about it. But I never ever dreamed that I would need to say to them to be vigilant to protect your right to vote, because I thought we were moving past those hurdles and issues that we had fought in the past. And it's shocking to me. I mean, we're talking about a sacred system and right in our country, and for it to have become so political and so partisan, I have no words.
Well, I've got a word for you. It's called grooming your victims. And that's how I see the president right now. He's grooming people to believe something that isn't there. And it's scary AF for this stuff to be happening today. I mean, when we hear that the president's not going to turn over power after the election, I mean, everything he says is leading up to that day, and to be able to say, no, there's a lot of problem here. We got a lot of fraud here. I don't understand how people can't see that. Am I wrong? Is that the wrong word?
No, I don't think you're wrong, but I also think that we have to somehow rise above that partisanship to say, it seems like you don't call people out like that. I understand specifically where you're coming from, Sarah, and I feel the same way, but I also think somehow we have to come up with a way to talk about it so that it's not, one party against the other, that this is about America.
Mm-hmm.
This is about our Constitution. and about what folks' rights are. And people have fought for years and died for us to be able to vote. And it just seems to me that somehow we have to change the vernacular. I don't know how to do that, but that seems to me that it's got to be something we work on.
I agree with you, and my concern is, in working with, say, talking with some of my elderly family members. Here's the kicker for me: is all of those things that our men and women have fought and died for are somehow not relevant now. Well, obviously they're out to get him because there's fraud in the ballot system. So it's almost like it's eroding confidence in everything we've known about our democracy. So I agree with you. I mean, I'm with Crystal here. That what do we tell people if they don't know they could do an absentee ballot? You can go to the Secretary of State's office, WVSOS.
It's go West Virginia vote.
Go vote.
That's right. Go vote
WV.com.
Yes, thank you.
Also call the county clerk's office in your county as well, and they'll have your information and can send it right out to you.
Yes. Thank you for that. So Crystal, that is,
It's a great question.
Yeah, to inform and get people engaged. Ask the questions. Find out where the polling places are. I will say I'm a little disappointed. I signed up to be a poll worker, to volunteer, and I've heard from no one.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of early yet. You probably will.
Okay. I'm glad you told me that, because I mean, I'm feeling a little left out, but
Yes.
I'm
Sarah,
hoping.
I would advise you, if you signed up, to contact your county clerk, because county clerks are scrambling right now for poll workers.
All right.
And so if you've signed up, because I had a couple of constituents that told me the same in my district, that they had signed up to be poll workers and they hadn't heard from anybody. So I got them, to ask them to make direct contact with the county clerk so they could make sure that they knew that they were available.
All right.
Because our poll workers are generally older folks, retired folks, and that's exactly the folks that are staying home to be safe. And so we need more folks outside of those vulnerable populations to step up and work the polls right now. And something else I want to say before it slips my mind is, I want to say, did you ever think that we would live in a time that our Senator Joe Manchin would have to introduce a resolution reaffirming the Senate's commitment to a peaceful transfer of power following an election? I'm 50 years old and I'm stupefied. I'm grateful that resolution was introduced by Senator Manchin, and even more grateful that it passed unanimously. That felt good to hear that. But at the same time, it's like, how is this real life? How are we at a place where we're worried about the transfer of power? I mean, if I had my favorite president of all time, who would probably be Teddy Roosevelt, and he had said something like, maybe I'm not going to go, or maybe we'll see about this election, that I would be mortified by that. No matter who the president is, no matter what party they represent, that's not how our system is supposed to work. And these are the things that frighten me, not only as a citizen, but as a student and teacher of history in our government. I mean, one of the famous quotes about you study our history so that we don't repeat it, so that we learn from it. And so we've got to make sure that we are aware and take these, I see them as threats, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
How would, like an infringement on the rights? I've heard that for the past 2 years in Charleston. Don't infringe on my freedom and choice. So the eagle has landed, and all these constitutional people are quiet. Why are we not marching and rallying with that? Why do you get to pick and choose what part of democracy that you're going to stand with?
You can't cherry pick the Constitution. Doc Staggers, did you want to add to the?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. I bet you can tell people that are not real familiar with computers, like me, obviously, that they could go to the library and they would help them get on and order one, or at least let them know every time I ask a librarian something, they fix it for me. The second scary part is our president now is commander in chief of all the armed forces. What if he takes command and just says, it's all over? Will the armed forces stick with him, or will they not? That's a nightmare for tonight, right?
Well, and I would say even an equal question is what's the Senate and Congress going to do?
Yeah.
What are they going to do?
I don't think they could do anything. It's just built into the Constitution, but yeah.
These are all very important questions, and love him or hate him, our former Senator Byrd knew the Constitution left and right, and the House of the rules of the Senate, and I mean, he could recite it backwards and forwards, and I would think he is just turning over in his grave right now over this.
I think one of the things we've learned, Margaret, to your point about what might happen, I mean, we face the same system. We face some of the same issues, I think, with Governor Justice having an emergency for 6 months. That's
exactly
never the powers that the governor was intended to have. The only emergencies we probably had before that were bad weather emergencies like flooding and, loss of electricity, things like that needed to be dealt with immediately. An emergency, this is a pandemic. It's not an emergency that you last 6 months, and the fact that he won't bring the legislature back in when it's surely in the Constitution that that's our role to manage the funds of the state. I think we're going to have, as a legislature and as Congress, look at these issues that have arisen during this pandemic to say, we might need to have some bills here, and we may need to strengthen the Constitution. Somehow we've got to get a handle on this so it doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah. Well, we saw earlier, or heard earlier, as Delegate Walker was talking about the response to her letter, the governor very easily and quickly handed that task off, delegated that to someone. But he's holding all the power, and has been since we adjourned in March. He's holding all the power, all the purse strings, making all the decisions in the way that, that's most visible to everybody right now, the way the colors that are being crayoned in on the map with, the county colors and whether we're going to school or not. I understand that the information changes, but I just feel like there has to be more input. And especially when you talk about the House of Delegates, we are those elected officials, the state level, who are closest to their constituency. We hear from them, we hear their questions and their concerns, and then, that's how we go and we legislate, by listening to our constituents and helping to come up with legislation to fix issues and challenges that they have. And our hands are tied. We're helpless to help our constituency, and have been for months, because we find out the information, what the rules are, what the goal line is, how the money's being spent, the same way everybody else in the state of West Virginia finds out. We watch it on one of these COVID press conferences. And
I liken this to if the governor was a CEO, and all of you
Yes.
were doing your job, and all of a sudden he just eliminated all your positions. You couldn't do your job.
Well, I think that's part of the problem as well, is that that's what he's used to doing. That's who he's used. That's how he's used to running his life. Well, this isn't a private business. This is the
Right.
people's business. There's a big difference, and he just doesn't seem to understand that.
Well, and going back to Delegate Bo's point, this isn't a Democratic issue. This is a bipartisan. Both parties are concerned about what's happening. I mean, we've heard from Republicans who are concerned about the fact that this money is just being spent and nobody knows where it's being spent or how it's being, no one has control but one person. So, sorry, my dog's in here and she really wants up. She's feeling very empowered this evening. Very empowered. Come here.
Doc Staggers, did you have something to say? It looked like you were maybe trying to speak there.
No, I was just agreeing with you all. And if we're not scared now, like I said, bad nightmares tonight, and love your doggy. Now he's happy, isn't he?
Mhm.
She, right?
She,
Okay.
yeah.
She's empowered.
She's spoiled. No,
Oh,
I think you're right. I mean, and that's really, I think it really goes to our message of whether it's in government, whether it's at the workplace, whether it's in any given situation, we have to feel empowered to understand what we're dealing with and then feel empowered to do something about it. And you don't have to do the same thing everyone else does. I've decided I want to volunteer at the polls. That's how I feel I can contribute and help out. Some people are running for office, other people are volunteering for campaigns. And so I think that the message here is we just really need to empower specifically every woman in the state, because there are more of us in the state, and yet we have the lowest representation. But and all of you are working I mean, trust me, I've been watching all of you, everything that you're doing, and you're working. In fact, I told Delegate Walker, don't make me come up there and get you some rest now. I was gonna have to come up there and wag my finger, but seriously, you guys are working non-stop, and yet it's like you said, Delegate Bo, you're finding out the same time everybody else does on the news.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that's what I found out about the governor's response today. I was like, I hosted a watch party. I was like, here we come. And I was like, oh, this what we doing today. We run to the fire and say, oh, but I'm not getting my hands dirty. I need you to call her and I need you to ask her what her demands are. And you don't have to sit and do nothing.
I'm so sorry I missed that. I was under a house, working under a house today, but I really, really am bummed. Yeah, it was dirty job, but I'm really bummed I missed that because, and again, leadership is taking on the hard fights, the hard questions, the hard decisions. That's leadership. It's not passing the buck. It's not delegating the dirty tasks to other people. It's about doing what has to be done by the person who is in charge of, overall. And that's just, it's so disappointing. And I worked for one of the greatest governors of all time, so I'm very spoiled in that regard. This is not something he would have backed away from at all. But that's disappointing. But you guys have, you sent the letter. I hope that there is going to be a better response. That's imagine if he could take that platform.
Response. Want
What's
to
that,
hear a
Delegate
response
Staggers?
from a letter I signed? Yes. I signed a letter along with Dr. Dan Doyle to tell the Attorney General to withdraw West Virginia from doing away with the Affordable Care Act, from doing away with you get no insurance if you have a pre-existing condition, which will be coronavirus, and if you're overweight or you have high blood pressure, or, on and on. And he called me a far leftist Democrat, doctor. So now you know who I am.
Exposed. I really do not understand that line of thinking, because we have such a high number of elderly in our state, and a high
Exactly.
number of children who are poor, and families who are poor, working poor. And these aren't
Hey,
families that
40% of us are overweight. That
Mhm.
is a pre-existing condition, and so 40% of us can't get insurance. How about that one?
I'm going to ask Danielle to hop in here for a minute and tell us how you so succinctly remind us to see something. Your phrase: see something,
See
say
something. Say something. Follow through. By listening, learning, loving, and leading.
And then we can't forget, do your job.
Do your job.
Do your job.
Well, ladies, I mean, here we
Yes,
are
Lisa.
at the end of another hour, and I mean, we can't top that. I mean, see something, say something, be brave, be bold, be empowered to speak your truth and to do the right thing. And that's from, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter what your education is. Doing the right thing doesn't come with titles or anything else. Just see something, say something, and follow through. So, ladies, I'm in awe of all of you, and thank you for the hard work that you're doing in very difficult times. And we just, appreciate everything that you're doing. And I hope that anybody who's watching this on the replay, those of you that have joined live, if you want to contact any of the delegates, their information is available. You can certainly make a comment. We can put you in touch with anyone. And so, yeah, empowerment. We need to be empowered, because our future is literally in our hands. Literally in our hands. So, ladies, thank you all so much again for the great work that you do.
Thank you. Thanks for moderating.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Everyone have a great weekend. Be safe. Follow the guidelines.